And I think that's the important thing for Liverpool right now. And you're right, that they've been really short in midfield. I mean, you can't imagine a bigger midfield turnover than what Liverpool are having this season. And I dare say that the Liverpool we see in 2 or 3 months' time will be incredibly different to the Liverpool we saw on the opening weekend at Stamford Bridge.
And I think he needs to be given a chance as well, because I think the optics are slightly skewed simply because Liverpool went for Caicedo for the British transfer record. They went for Lavia and didn't get either of them. And then some people will say, Endo, why are we going for Endo when we could have got Caicedo or Lavia? Whereas I think people maybe, as you've been explaining what kind of player he is, maybe take a step back and then make that judgment when they've seen him play.
Yes, sometimes it's Mr. Right, sometimes it's Mr. Right now. And he definitely falls in the latter category. I mean, they need someone who's going to work from now. And as you were saying, Michael, they've lost experience as well, not just players, but experienced players.
And everything you've described about him, Andy, do you see that translating into the Premier League? Yeah,
I'm sure he'll do really well, because if you think about that ability to keep calm, to be able to guide the team, I think that's really important, because the Bundesliga, as people will probably find out over the next while as they watch Harry Kane here and there, it's totally frenetic as well. So in terms of the sort of pace at which everything happens and being able to deal with that, the Bundesliga and the Premier League, they're different in a lot of ways, but the speed at which things happen is actually quite similar.
What else do you think Liverpool need then in this window, Andy?
More midfielders. I mean, it's pretty clear. I think the other plus with Endo, I have the feeling that Liverpool need another centre-back, but if they've got Endo, for the moment, they can kick that can down the road a little bit, because maybe he can even play a bit of centre-back. I think people will look at him a bit like people looked at Lisandro Martinez when he turned up at Man United and think, no, he can't do that. I think he probably can do that, especially in a possession-based side. And of course, that will be the big difference from him for arriving from Stuttgart, that he will be in a possession-based side rather than a team that's younger and scrapping to stay up. It's a different expectation. But look, numbers in midfield are the key thing.
Before we move on, we find it intriguing then when Liverpool have to play Thursday, Sunday, especially when they're away on the Thursday, and a quick turnaround.
Yeah, and that's why they need a bigger squad. You know, it's that simple, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Liverpool have also explored the possibility of signing Sofyan Amrabat. Darmish, are Manchester United still looking at Amrabat?
They're still interested in him. I mean, Sky Italy were reporting the news yesterday through Gianluca Di Marzio that Liverpool may have explored the conditions of a deal through intermediaries for Sofyan Amrabat. But, I mean, it's not a bad thing for Fiorentina if it's out there that Liverpool and Manchester United are interested in Sofyan Amrabat, because two clubs of that stature are going to only push the price up and only going to be a benefit to Fiorentina. But with regard to Manchester United, I think behind the scenes they're still discussing whether a deal for Amrabat is still actually achievable, be it Amrabat or another midfield option who they've been looking at throughout this summer's transfer window, or whether there would have to be further departures, and departures that are going to glean big money for them to be able to go into the market and get someone like an Amrabat. Or we were saying Amadou Onana from Everton, who would be valued at around £60 million. That looks a lot more unlikely than someone like Amrabat, because Amrabat would be cheaper. We do know that there has been an absence from that midfield, in that Fred has left for Fenerbahce in a deal worth €15 million. There are talks about a possible exit for Donny van der Beek as well. It's just whether the departure of Fred and the potential departure of Donny van der Beek is going to be enough for Manchester United to go into the market and bring in someone like Amrabat, or whether they will still have to sell further to be able to do a deal like that. Because throughout this transfer window, in every single deal that they've done, the information we're getting is, yes, we're interested in this player, we're interested in this player, this is our first choice, this is our primary target, but with one eye on complying with FFP rules. And that's been the theme throughout this transfer window. And I think that's been almost a bleed from last summer, when you could argue that they kind of overspent towards the end of the window, when they didn't get their business done early at all. They didn't start the season very well, and it just had the visual of it being a bit of a panic at the end of the transfer window, when Anthony was a player that they were interested in at the start and probably could have got for maybe 10, 20 million cheaper than what they ended up paying. Casemiro became a target towards the end of the window. and at 30 years old they were paying 60, 70 million pounds for him. So I think they wanted to avoid anything like that happening this time. And as it stands, look, their primary 3 targets, we're told, were the players that they brought in. And any other additions to that would probably be dependent on departures, and departures that are going to get some money for them.
I'll come back to other players that United are potentially interested in, but Andy, just interested to get your take on Amrabat. Where do you think he'd be a better fit? Would he fit in better at Liverpool or Manchester United?
I think he'd be great for either of them. Instinctively, I think Liverpool need him more because, like we said, they need more in midfield. They don't really want to be in a position where Endo's got to try and play 50 games a season in his first season in the Premier League. And Amrabat, when we're talking about that experience, he's incredibly accomplished. You know, he's brilliant at the World Cup. Now, he's had a bit of an up and down relationship with Fiorentina. Didn't immediately get back into the team when he came back from the World Cup, and they weren't 100% happy with his attitude. But, you know, he's a really valuable asset who we know can do it at the highest level. But then again, you look at United, and they got to a state of what the Spanish would call Casemiro dependencia quite quickly. They were relying on him so heavily from like the first couple of months. Again, you can't go through a season where Casemiro plays 60 matches as he goes into his 30s. So they've got to find different ways to compose that midfield for different demands.
Darmish, you've already kind of explained the situation with United. Would need to sell before they could bring other players in. So where does that leave the situation with Benjamin Pavard?
Again, a similar situation. There would have to be a departure for money in that department. That's what's likely to have to happen. Now, we know there was a chance that Harry Maguire was going to leave. That changed earlier on this week when he decided to stay. West Ham United thought they'd had a deal agreed and were just waiting for Manchester United to sort out the exit terms with Harry Maguire. And while that was happening, Manchester United were trying to do due diligence on other centre-backs. Nice's Jean-Claire Todibo was one, but the one that they were really after was Bayern Munich's Benjamin Pavard. Now, we were told that initial talks had happened between the two clubs and that all parties, I think, were willing to do a deal because he's entered the final year of his contract and Pavard wanted to go to Manchester United. Since the Maguire deal hasn't happened, United have had to retreat slightly because there's no money to get that deal done. And I think Inter Milan now are interested in Pavard. They've moved for him because of what's happened at United. It's not to say that United aren't interested in the likes of Pavard or Amrabat anymore. They are. But their hands are tied a little bit until they can get some business done going out of the club.
And it's disappointing for United fans if indeed they don't get Pavard as it
Hugely.
looks. Yeah.
Hugely. I think because he's clearly very interested. I mean, he gave the green light to United ahead of other clubs from what I gather. And he's good mates with Rafael Varane, so that they will have been talking about it over the last little while as well. I think you look at his athleticism, his technique, what a great defender he is, and he can play centre-back or right-back. He gives them a couple of different options. But the whole Harry Maguire thing, getting it stuck, has come a bit out of left field. Like Darmish was saying, I don't think United were particularly expecting that either. But, you know, Inter are not flush. So, although Inter are trying to take advantage of this situation, it's not like they've got bucket loads of cash and can make this happen in 1 or 2 days, I don't think. So, whereas they want Pavard to decide, it's going to take Inter a while to piece the deal together. So whether that means United resurrecting something for Maguire or something else happening, they're not out of this, I don't think.
Do you feel when Varane came in, I felt like it elevated United's defence. Casemiro came in, elevated Manchester United's midfield. What a signing he was. Is Pavard, would you say, along those lines in terms of stature and what he'd bring to the side?
Yeah, I think in terms of that sort of confidence of consistently winning, which is something that United have lacked for the last couple of years.
Champions League player.
Yeah, and a World Cup winning player. And all that's really important, I think. But Bayern now want to get rid. I mean, they didn't want to, but, you know, like I said, I was at the German Super Cup. He played like he was totally checked out. He had a terrible game and got pulled at half-time, really. And, you know, there's this sense that he just wants to be gone now. And so someone's going to take advantage of that.